sometimes the simplest recipes turn out to be the most delicious, and this German carrot one pot is a perfect example. The recipe comes from Mike's mum, and it's something he grew up eating and still loves today. I've made it often over the years, both at home and at work, and even children love it. It's easy and economical and sits somewhere between a soup and a casserole. The pork and the vegetables become very tender while still holding their shape, and paired with a piece of toast, it's a lovely and comforting meal. So the first thing I do is make the stock, and I use pork belly rashers, and Mike's mum doesn't put in quite this many, but I got these from the butcher and they're 1 kilo, and Mike and I both like a little bit of extra pork, so I'm going to use the 1 kilo. And with a sharp knife I just remove the rind from the rashers and discard the rind. Then simply place the pork rashers uncut into a heavy based pot, together with 1 medium to large onion, finely diced, and 2 or 3 bay leaves, depending on the size. These are quite small, so I'll use 3. Then just enough water to cover the pork rashers, and that was 1 litre. And you know, you can always add more water later if it needs it. And then I take this over to the stove and bring it to a boil. And when it does come to a boil, I reduce the heat, put on a lid, and keeping a rolling gentle simmer, I let it cook for at least 30 to 40 minutes until the meat is really tender. And in the meantime, I get the vegetables ready. I have 1 kilo of carrots here, unpeeled weight, and I have 450 grams of unpeeled weight in potatoes, so like 2 large potatoes. Now these need to be cut all about the same size, a nice small size. So on a spoon you can get a little bit of carrot, a little bit of potato, a little bit of pork. And I'm going to use my little nicer dicer here on the larger dice, which is still quite small, because this makes really light work of dicing the carrots. I bought this one secondhand for $5, but you can pick these up really cheap online. And the same with the potatoes. And the last thing that goes into this dish is some fresh parsley, and I'm going to chop it now so it's all ready. Now I'm not going to put all that parsley in because parsley flavour can be quite strong. I've got 1/3 cup here, which weighs 17 grams, and the rest of this chopped parsley I can put in the middle of the table when I serve it. Or I'll taste it, and I think if it can have more parsley, I'll add a little bit more, but I'll start with 1/3 cup. So it's been simmering away for half an hour. I'm just going to check it and see where it's at. They feel pretty tender, but it's not falling off the skewer straight away, so I'm going to simmer them for another 10 minutes. But they're nearly there. That's been 40 minutes and the meat is tender. So all I do is take out the pork rashers and put them on a plate to cool down a little. Then I add 2 rounded teaspoons of veggie stock powder, together with the potatoes and the carrots. And I bring this back to the boil. And once it comes back to the boil, I place on the lid, reduce the heat, and let it simmer away again for another 20 to 30 minutes until the vegetables are tender. And when the pork is cool enough to handle, I simply cut it into small little pieces, about the same size as the potatoes and the carrots, discarding any rind I might have missed. And actually you probably don't need to remove the rind at the start, you could just remove it once it's cooked. It comes off easy then. And simply put it back on the plate because this gets added as soon as the vegetables are ready. So that's had 20 minutes. I'll just check them for doneness. potatoes are right. I'll just check the carrots. And the best way to check them is just to taste one. And they're both tender. So now I simply just add the pork back to the pot. And if you find you need a little bit more liquid, just add a bit more water. If you find the bay leaves, remove them at this stage. And whilst that's coming back to the simmer, I do one more thing, which I suppose really doesn't make it a one pot. And all I do is put 60 grams of butter into a small pot. And once that is bubbling, I add 1 tablespoon of corn flour or plain flour. Oops. And I stir that until it's smooth, and just for a minute or so. And then, ever so slowly, I pour that into the one pot. And this will thicken it and also adds a lovely flavour. If it isn't quite thick enough, which I like it a little bit thicker than that, simply add another teaspoon of corn flour mixed with a teaspoon of water, and that should thicken it up enough. And now, time to finish it all off. So taste it for seasoning. Oh, it tastes so lovely, this dish. I'm just going to add a little salt, not much, but I will add a good amount of black pepper. And the last thing I add is the chopped parsley. And that is the cherry on top of the carrot one pot. Oh, there's my third and final bay leaf. And that's done. That's how easy it is. Now I'm going to put the lid on to keep it warm, and I'll serve up a bowl. This is such a lovely and comforting meal. And you know, I think it could become a family favourite as long as everyone loves carrots. So how I like to serve it is just in a bowl. Plenty of the lovely broth and a little sprinkle of parsley on top. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy this one if you give it a go. It's pretty nutritious, simple to make, and it's a favourite in our house. See you again soon.